Pharmaceuticals don't make people healthy, they just mask symptoms. The standard American diet is killing Americans at an unprecedented rate. 92.3% of all adult Americans are metabolically sick. Basically, the entire adult population in America is sick. The longest fast was 384 days. He didn't die, and he didn't eat for over a year, but I'm really hard to kill.
In today's episode, we got Dr. Floyd, our chief medical correspondent. I am so honored, doctor. It's amazing that I get to interview you today and the world gets to know you a little bit. Tell us how you got started in medicine and a little bit about your backstory.
Well, thanks, Michael, for having me here and including me in this Sierra Health podcast. This is awesome. I love it. And I'm honored to be a part of it. Oh, my backstory. It's a long, storied road. I'm not your typical doctor. I went to med school the grand age of 32, I think. So I lived in Colorado as a climbing guide, a ski patroller, a ski guide, a mountain guide, waiter, bartender, all the fun stuff. I graduated college in 91. I went to med school in, 02, I think. So
Wow.
13 years later, or
Nice.
11 years later, right? So 12 years later. So I had a lot of life in between. I'm not your typical doctor. Like I said, most people go from high school, college, med school, right? And so I like to say that I lived a life in between. And so I did. I've done a lot of amazing things. I've skied all over the world. I've ridden my dirt bike all over the world. I was a downhill mountain bike racer. But the real quick story, my story is I was waiting tables at a restaurant in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I lived there for a couple of years. Amazing place. And I was waiting tables, and there was a host who was from Jackson, this young guy named Rhett. And he looks at me one day. He's like, Rob, I just got back I finished med school, and I'm going to residency at the Mayo Clinic to be an orthopedic surgeon. And he says, you should try that, man. You should go to med school. He's like, you're wasting your life here as a waiter. And, you should go to med school. You seem smart. You do great. At that time, I was also a volunteer firefighter in Jackson in Wilson, Wyoming. And, so he says, go to med school. And he's like, I went to med school in the Caribbean. And I said, oh, shit, I didn't even know they had that. I didn't even know that existed.
Damn.
And so he's like, here's the deal, man. You go to med school, come back, and we'll open an orthopedics practice. I was like, wow, that sounds great.
Damn.
I'm like, and, he says to this other guy, he says to me, he's like, that guy over there, John or Rick, whatever. I wouldn't tell him to, but I think you should try it. So one day I was literally working on a ranch right on the Snake River in Wilson, making $25 an hour. I was literally digging ditches. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm too smart for this. I don't want to waste what I've got. So I made the choice. I was literally looking up the Tetons, and I said, what the hell? I'm going to check it out. I'm going to apply to med school. And if I get in, my life goes this way. If I don't, I just keep going this way. So I applied, and I got in. I didn't even tell my parents that I had applied to med school. And one day I just called them up and be like, hey, guess what? I'm going to medical school. And they were shocked. They're like, are you freaking kidding me? Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Med school is a big thing. I mean, a big deal.
Yeah. I went to a Caribbean school. It's a little bit easier to get into, but now it's very difficult to get in, even in the Caribbean schools. And I'm the first doctor in my family, all sides of my family. I was so naive. I didn't even know I had to take board exams. I had no clue. I said, it's kind of how I roll in life. I'm like, screw it. I'll give it a try. See what happens. So I went and spent a couple years in the Caribbean in med school. And then I came back and did my training in the States, in New York and North Carolina, Colorado. And then I matched into, I wanted to go into orthopedic surgery. Wasn't cool enough to get in that club, unfortunately. It's a very competitive residency. And I had
Mm.
no idea. Again, I was so completely naive. It was just, I was completely retarded about what I was doing. Um, and so then
That's
I did
awesome.
2 years of trauma surgery in Las Vegas as a resident, which was
Nice.
awesome. I really, really learned a ton about critical care medicine at that point. And I really like critical care medicine, but trauma surgeons, what I saw, the trauma surgeons were the smartest doctors in the hospital, because a lot of surgeons, once they become surgeons, they forget medicine in general. They just do
Yeah.
surgery.
Yep.
The trauma surgeons have to take care of the trauma ICU patients. So they have to
Wow.
know medicine. So
Yeah.
to me, a trauma surgeon is probably one of the smartest doctors in the hospital. And I learned from some amazing doctors in Las Vegas. I loved critical care. And so, but I did 2 years down there, and I didn't want to continue in surgery. It's just wasn't the lifestyle I
Mm.
wanted. Had it been orthopedics, yes, I would have done it. I would have sacrificed 5, 6 years for that. I didn't want to do
Wow.
general surgery, trauma surgery. So I ended up going into UNR Reno.
Nice.
Medical school residency for family medicine. And that was a great, amazing. I was so blessed to go into that program. Really great program. I learned a lot. And then because of the combination of trauma surgery and family medicine, I was really, really keen and adept at working in rural ERs, because you can do
Oh, wow.
I could do chest tubes, I could do central lines, I could intubate people. I could also deliver babies. I could also, take care of old people. I could take care of young people. I could do everything in the ER. So I've done a ton of ER. I did hospitalist work. So I've been a trauma surgeon, a critical care doctor, because those go hand in hand, and then family medicine, emergency medicine, hospitalist. And then what I found was integrative functional medicine. And that is a whole
Nice.
nother
Okay.
ballgame.
So tell me about that. What interests you in going that field?
I went to CU Boulder for undergrad, kind of a hippie school, crunchy
Mm-hmm.
granola place. I was a vegan for a week, and I was a vegetarian for, 6 years. I
Mm-hmm.
learned all sorts of cool stuff about Chinese medicine, herbal medicine, and it's just I learned that, like, you don't have to take antibiotics when you're sick. You can take oregano oil, you can take garlic and golden seal,
Wow.
and boost your immune system. You can do cold plunges, red light therapy, things like that. And so what I saw was that being eyeballs deep in Western medicine, I saw that sometimes it's not always the right choice. It's reactive medicine, and I don't
Hmm.
remember how I came across the Institute for Functional Medicine, but I did, and I did it. I did
Mm-hmm.
like an intro course, and I was like, "Holy crikeys, this is what I need to do." And the reason
Nice.
why is because it's root cause medicine. Okay, so
Mm.
what I've discovered in Western medicine, they say, diagnose and treat, diagnose and treat, diagnose and treat. What do we learn in
Mm.
medical school in Western medicine? We learned how to diagnose and treat. We
Mm-hmm.
diagnose you
Mm.
with a disease, and we treat you
Mm-hmm.
with medicine, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceutical driven model. And I saw that, like, it's not really actually making people healthier. In fact, I think
Yeah.
oftentimes it's doing more harm than good. And I
Yeah.
truly, truly believe that the human body is genius. And if
Yeah.
you give it the right information, it will heal itself. Again, I will say that again. The human body is genius. All
Yes.
you got to do is get out of
I
its
agree.
way, give it the right information, and it will heal itself. And when I say the right information, I mean the 5 tenets of functional medicine is diet and nutrition, right?
Mhm.
Quality sleep,
Right.
movement,
Yep.
detox, stress
Mm-hmm.
reduction, and interpersonal communications, whether it's with
Right.
other people or relationships.
Mm.
That's what makes humans healthy. It's not
Yes.
me giving you a pharmaceutical medication.
Correct.
Pharmaceuticals don't make people healthy, they just mask symptoms.
Mm.